Hey, Russ, welcome to Crosswalk Talk. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here.
You are welcome. We're speaking with Russ Taff, Grammy winner, Dove Award winner, many other award winners, of course, a Hall of Famer as well. Formerly of the Imperials, Gaither vocal band, successful solo career. And Russ, you have a new album,
Yeah.
Cover Story. It includes covers by artists such as Bob Dylan, U2, Prince, Simon and Garfunkel, and many more. It's my understanding, Russ, that you were kind of hesitant to do this album. They kind of pitched you the project and you weren't really accepting it at first. Why?
Well, you know, when we sat down and began to discuss it, I've just done things a certain way for so long, producing and other people producing me, and you just get used to this certain mics and preamps and things in your ears that you really like. And of course, working with Steve Taylor, who's an oddball anyway, one of the most creative people I know. But
yeah,
we were all bringing songs to the table. And but we began for all of us, they know my story. They watched the documentary, and it was like, let's build these songs around your story. Each song will tell a different part of the journey. And that was kind of like the criteria as we began to pick material. I mean, the good part of this journey, the wonderful part of this journey, the hard part of this journey. And let's just be honest, let's just be honest with the whole thing. And so I don't know, as it began to come together and they would play me back a vocal that they had comped of the early 3-4 passes of it. And it was like, I like it. I really, really like it, because it just captured the innocence of the whole thing before my mind just started kicking into it. So I don't know. The song selection is from Duran Duran to Depeche Mode and the Nationals, and this is the first time I've never really written, for a record, but we just decided, let's go for songs, a lot of them from the 80s that we can pinpoint different parts of my life. And so it began to come together. And I mean, just right now, Michael, you could pick a song and I could tell you right where I was in my journey.
Well, let's talk about that. First off, the documentary you were mentioning was "I Still Believe," and the book as well of the same name. You covered on this album, Cover Story. You covered "Sound of Silence," the song by Simon and Garfunkel, covered later by Disturbed and Pentatonics.
Right.
How did that song resonate with your story?
Well, relapse. Relapse.
Yeah.
And for me, you open that door to that hotel room again, and you've been there many times and walked away from it, and you'd have long periods of sobriety, and then something would happen. Like, I remember I had 10-year sobriety and my dad died. And I chose to walk back into that room. And it was like, hello, it's familiar. I know what this is going to cost me, but I understand and understand this place, and it's a familiar place. And that, hello, darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk to you again. And it just, when I heard that opening line, of course, we all know the song. It's a legendary song, but hello, darkness, my old friend, it was like, I know that. And to me, it was just relapse. Which is such a part of my story. The documentary, you've watched it. So it was a familiar place, unfortunately, but I knew that place, and I understood that place. So that's where that song, came to be on the record.
Let me toss out another couple titles here that might have a similar theme to them. One is "Tear Down This Building," or tear this building down, I should say. Another one is the Nationals' "Demons." Are those a similar story to "Sound of Silence"?
Yes. Demons is probably the best description of addiction and relapse I've ever heard. And it just portrays that place of falling down again and falling back into that mud hole again. It's just an incredible description, for me anyway, description of addiction and relapse. And again, with Tear This Building Down, I mean, those were just some songs that specifically talked about the darker side of this journey. And so those were songs. I remember I didn't bring Demons, Steve did. After that day, I just melted down. And it's like, I've been in therapy a long time, just dealing with the trauma of my childhood that just kept reaching up and biting me in the butt through my young adult life when I left home. And that constant message of my earliest memories of me and my brother, worth salt that goes on your bread, and you'll never amount to anything. You'll never amount to anything. And after a while, you start believing it. And so you act like that part of your life just didn't happen. You walk away from it. But yet you win your first Grammy, and there's no bigger award. There's no bigger award. And I get back to the hotel after the parties and, the record company celebrating, and within 2 hours, they gave this to the wrong person. I am not good enough for this award. And it's like you fall right back after all the work that you've done to get out of that, and still it would reach up and grab you. You'll never amount to anything. And so it took a long time. It's like guilt is something you've done wrong. You feel guilty. But shame is you are that thing that's wrong. And it took so long to work through that childhood thing that I began to realize how God sees me. And that changed everything when I began to understand the way he views me and how incredible he thinks I am. It's like he is desperately in love with me. And I believe once I begin to understand that, then after a while, it's like, I'm worthy of good things because of him. And, the whole scenario just flips of like, yeah, they told me this, but he told me that. And I believe him. And that trauma that you grew up in and things that happened in that household that, and you mixed Jesus and addiction, your dad, who's the first face of God that you see. And, he's standing up there preaching, and then he disappears and he drinks and he drinks and he drinks. So you just, I don't know, and the beatings and the verbal abuse and everything else. But once you act like it didn't happen and you walk away from it, it doesn't walk away from you. And it took a whole lot of work of, studying the word and therapy of like understanding what happened and that it wasn't my fault. And then you begin to change. It's like, I'm a child of the King,
Amen.
They didn't think I was, but then you realize they were raising me just like they were raised. They didn't set out to destroy my life. And my dad's father, my grandpa, told him the same things. And back then they were just raising us like they were raised. So you begin to understand things and accept things. And then the Holy Spirit begins to work. and just constantly whispering in my ear, Russ, you're good, Russ, you're good, Russ, I love you. And then that whole dialogue in your brain begins to change. And you start liking yourself. I didn't like myself for years, but because he loved me so much, well, maybe I'm worth loving, and that he never walked away from me. When I walked in that room, hello, darkness, my old friend, he walked right in there with me, and with the other songs of addiction and relapse, and you think you're alone, you think you disappointed everybody, but he never walked away from me. And I tried to walk away from him. I tried to say, don't come in here. Don't come in here. I'm so embarrassed that you would walk into this hotel room and see me. But he walked right in there. Russ, I love you. Russ, I want to help you. And oh man, that was so hard. I was at this lowest point. Hello, darkness, my old friend. And he walked right into that darkness. He wasn't afraid of it. It didn't bother him. Man, when he walked in there, the light just came on, and I would just tell him, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And I just couldn't do it right. I couldn't do it right. And he said, Russ, that's why I died, to give you power to do it right. Mm-hmm. And so it was years. But I tell you, Michael, I had no idea you could be this happy. I had no idea. These last 18, 19 years, they have just been a gift from God. And I love my wife so desperately, and I'm enjoying every day. I just feel good about myself. And when you like yourself, man, that's amazing what it does to you, But anyway, I'm rambling on, Michael. Sorry.
Russ, you're preaching the gospel, and your story has inspired so many people. You mentioned earlier it's been 18, 19 years. You've been sober for that long.
Yeah.
I am curious what those conversations are like with fans who talk to you about their own experience and how maybe how you've inspired them. What are those conversations like with fans who resonate with your story?
Well, before I did the documentary, Michael, man, I really wrestled, because when you let your secret out, you don't know what Christians are going to do.
Yeah.
And we're both have been around long enough that we've seen what has happened to people that have stumbled and fell. But I really felt that if somebody tells the truth, somebody just, you know what, I really, really messed up. I mean, you're sitting with a circle of people, let's say 12, 13 people. And one guy lifts his hand and says, I messed up so bad. And I'm trying to get better. Then there's another person over there who goes, you know what, I did too. And I did too. And then once we say it out loud to somebody, and that's when, once you acknowledge to somebody the struggle, the pain, the disappointment, the heartache, whatever, then a dialogue can start. And so I go in, and about the only reason I go out anymore, of course, I love music, I love to sing, but is to tell the story of a God that can change a life. And it's amazing how, and I'm honest, I don't sugarcoat it, man, it happened. And when I'm standing up in front, and of course I do the songs people want to hear, new songs, but then I take 15 minutes and I tell this story. How this guy up front fell so hard, but the grace of God. And people will come up, and I'm either down front or at the product table, and they will lean in, Michael, and whisper in my ear their pain. their failure. And I remember the first one, years after I started telling my story, there was this woman, she was probably 45 years old. And because I told my secret, she leaned in and whispered in my ear. She said, I was molested from my uncle from the age of 12 to 15. And he made me feel like it was my fault. And she had been carrying that shame all of these years. But then you have a guy, you know what? This happened to me. And this is my secret. But secrets, they just keep us sick. You know, they keep us from getting better. And so I don't know, it happens time and time and time again. And some of them say it out loud, but most of them lean in and they'll whisper, Russ, you know, I'm on heroin. Russ, you know, I had an affair with my wife, and nobody, whatever. But when somebody has the courage to be honest, and, you know, it encourages other people to be honest. And so I don't know, even with this record, I've never sang a song about demons. And I knew some people would have a hard time with that. But when I tell them, it's part of my story of addiction and relapse. And that's part of me. That's what happened to me. And that's why I wanted to put that song on there. And, you know, 99% of the people get it and they understand it. And there's still those few, very few, you know, how can you sing about something like that? Well, you know, it's like I heard a fella say one time, he said, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And I always tell these people that whisper in my ear, I said, thank you for telling me that. Thank you. But you've got to tell one person in your life, in your circle, about this. And I say, find somebody that's lives had been shattered and God's put it back together and they're pretty healthy. Tell that person, because they won't gossip. They know you know, this thing that you're dealing with. And but I don't know. I mean, I love music. You love music. That's the reason we do this. But then the motivating factor behind all of this is to tell this story of what he did in my life.
Russ, I was going to ask you what advice you give people or would give someone who is in a similar place that you were. I think you kind of hinted at it there. What advice would you give someone who is battling addiction right now? Or maybe a family who's battling addiction. There's someone in their family is.
You know, they say that one addict affects 30 people in his family, one addict, or in his circle anyway. But, you know, they don't want to be addicts. They don't want to live this way. And when they're alone and by themselves, they would give anything to be free from that. And they know it's destroying their life. But it's so hard for people to surrender, just to surrender. I remember, you know, I've been going to AA for 35 years. And so I love the 12 steps. I just, you know, love them because it cleaned up the wreckage of my past. It really did, those steps. But I remember it was before I really got sober, and I've tried to do it myself. And, you know, they told me to fast and pray and do this and that, and God would do this and that. And it just didn't work until that first step in AA said, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. And second step came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and then turn our will and life over to the care of God. But for me to admit that I can't do it by myself, I can't. I tried. But to trust somebody to tell your secret to trust somebody to let them in, just to let them in. and there's people around them that won't judge them, that actually want to help. And if we could just start a dialogue with someone, just start a dialogue, because very few people I know, Michael, and you may differ with this, prayed and never drink again, or prayed and never did drugs again or whatever, because it's a process. It took us a long time to get to that place where we're drinking every day or drugging every day. But if I was addressing a person right now that's listening to you, it was like, I know you don't want to be this way. I know you would give anything to be free from this. And there is help. There is help. But you have to walk toward that help. It won't come and find you. You have to have the courage to start taking steps toward recovery. And there are so many places now that if you really, really want to be free, there's people, there's 12-step programs, there's Celebrate Recovery in churches that deals with this. And but just to say too, you can be free. Right now, you may not feel like it, and you're hiding in a closet, terrified people will find out. But to risk to tell someone, and to say out loud, I need help. And I I heard one time years ago, it said the prayer that God always responds to is help me. God always responds to that prayer. And that brings him on the scene so fast when we just, God help me, God help me. But, I'm a living example of somebody that life had been broken and how I reached out for help. And it took so much courage from me. Here I am, a gospel singer, and I'm standing up there singing about Jesus, and I meant every word of it. I meant every word of it. But I could not wait to leave that stage and just go shut my brain off. I wanted to be numb. I wanted to quiet those voices from my childhood. I felt so horrible about how I was disappointing Jesus by living this way. But when I said, help me, and then I put legs to that, and somebody said, well, do this. And I said, okay, I will. And my sponsor asked me, he said, are you willing to go to any length to get well? Are you willing to go to any length to get well? And I said, yes, I will do whatever it takes to get well. And for a long time, it was one step forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. But eventually, I remember I got 24 hours. I got 24 hours. And then I got 48 hours. And then I got, 3 days and 4 days. And every day was a celebration. In fact, the thing I love, and I don't mean to be preaching about Celebrate Recovery and AA, but they are helping so many people. But I remember I had 3 weeks before I went to treatment. And I was one of those that I needed help, and treatment was the thing that I needed. But I remember I had 3 weeks early on, and I relapsed. And these people had been working with me. I mean, my AA group, my AA small group had been encouraging me and talking to me. And we had a deal after meeting. We would go to Shoney's or Denny's and have coffee, keep talking, And I remember I relapsed, and I felt so guilty. These people had worked so hard to help me. And my sponsor said, at the next meeting, if you really want to get well, I want you to stand up in this group and tell the people what you did. And so there is a chip system in AA, in Celebrate Recovery, that they call it a 24-hour chip of like, I want to try this way of life for 24 hours. And it's one day at a time, not a month or a year, but today, just today. And so I tell everybody in my group that I had relapsed. And there was no moans or oh man or anything like that. And it was time to get a chip. I want to try it again. I want to try it again. And so they said, "Is anybody here have a desire to try to stay sober one day?" And I stood up and I walked to the front, so embarrassed, just so embarrassed. And I took my chip. And when I turned around, all of them started applauding. All of them started applauding and saying, "You can do it, Russ. Try it again. You can do it, Russ. We're here for you." And I felt accepted with this struggle and with this pain that I was in. And but to have people around you that when you slip or fall, they won't walk away, and you have the courage to say, "You know what? But I want to try again." And those are the people that get sober. They're willing to go do whatever it takes to get well. Those are the ones that escape that prison.
Let's close this, Russ, by talking about some of these songs on this new album, cover story that maybe are a little more hope-filled, might be a little more positive. I love your story, but the album is not just that. The album is a balance of positive and, I guess, honest.
Yes.
Tell us about some of those, one or two of those.
Well, back to my early years, and I talked about some of that, but my grandmother, when there's addiction in the home, the whole system falls apart. You can stay out to 5 o'clock in the morning. Nobody cares. And when dad would relapse and things like that, and mama would just fall apart. But you can't talk outside the family. You can't. I mean, especially if you're a pastor, you can't talk outside the family. And most families where there's addiction, it's the same thing. Don't talk about what, to anybody outside this family, what's going on. But my grandmother, she knew. And their backyard, backed up against our backyard. And I remember I would go over and I'd sit on that front porch and I would talk to grandma. And she was an old Pentecostal woman. She would lean over and comb her silver hair, that went down to her waist, and she'd roll it up and put it in a bun. And she would say, "Son, it's going to be all right. I know it doesn't look like it, but it's going to be all right." And I hung on to her. She died when I was 12, but I picked this song, Grandma's Hands, to honor her. Just to honor her. Those first 12 years of my life, she was my sanctuary. She was the thing that I held on to. And then we go into When Love Comes to Town. And I've just always loved that song. Man, when love walks in the door, everything changes. When love comes to town, I'm going to jump that train. And, it was that song I've always loved. I've always loved because my life changed when love came to town, and when Jesus come walking into my life saying, "Come on, get up, let's go." And I chose that song and the Dylan tune, "I Believe in You." And I love that song, always have. And, and I've got a story in high school where, I wanted to follow Jesus and my friends began to go in another direction. And I didn't follow. And some of them got real mad at me because we'd been together since first grade, and they're starting to drink and smoke and hit on that whole thing, that how boys develop. And I walked away from them. And some of them got really angry at me. I remember one of them throwing me against the wall in the bathroom. My head slams against the tile, and him just yelling at me. "Why are you doing this? Why are you walking away from us?" But it was like, "I believe in you," even through the tears and the laughter. I believe. I just believe. And we go into. I'm trying to remember the order of it, but people are people.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that song that Tori and I wrote in 1983. "You're my brother, you're my sister, so take me by the hand." And the song "People Are People" is like, why can't we get along? Why can't we hold on to each other? And when I heard that, you know, when that song was brought to, I think John Payne brought it. It was like, man, what a timeful message right now.
Mm,
I've
yeah.
never seen this country so divided, and you know what I'm talking about. And you know, I have friends that stop talking to other friends. It's like, and we forget that we're all children of God and we're all neighbors. So, Lord, I'm trying to think of others. Oh, you know, toward the end of the song is a song called "I Will," and you know, I heard someone say, if you've had 5 close friends through your life, you've been blessed. 5 close friends, and um, and I have maybe 3. I don't have 5 over the years, but I had 3 that we've hung together. Uh, and it's, if you need someone to cry with you, I'll cry with you. You know, if you're broken and you need someone just to sit with you, I will. And when it comes time to die, I'll be there for you. And I love that song. It's just called "I Will." And of course, then to end the record with "Oh, the poor powerless." Golly. All the poor and power, all that's lost and lonely. All the thieves will come confess and know that we are holy. And all will sing out hallelujah. What a celebration. What a celebration. And we wanted to end the record with that. I mean, you go through this journey of great highs and then lows and then back up, and but to end the record with just the goodness and mercy and the grace of God, and to go out on that note. Yeah, some of the points in my life have been really hard and some of them have been really incredible, but to end the record with what he has done in our lives and the prison that he brought me out of, and we wanted to end the record with that. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and but man, Jesus, Jesus. And so to close the record out with that, and come out on this note of just glory. Just glory. Oh, thank God he never left me. Oh, thank God he raised me up. Thank God that he walked in to that hotel room with me. So anyway, man, the rough thing about getting older is you cry all the time.
Russ, I almost feel like we need to give an invitation here. Your testimony has impacted me, and I know it's impacted other people who are listening and watching this. Of course, your book and your the movie documentary is "I Still Believe." If there are people who want to know more about your past, and the album is Cover Story, and it's powerful, and it's so many different kinds of songs on there, and I think people are going to really enjoy it. Hey, Russ, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very, very much.